part of it.
According to Stanford researchers,
coordinated disinformation.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for having me here. This wonderful place, and wonderful people, and I'm just really happy to be in Chicago. Chicago, home of the famous Chicago Sun-Times, who did great. We were talking about that. Great muckraking in the 1970s. I don't know if they're doing any muckraking these days, but Project Veritas has been very busy, as you can all see. So I'm going to present some video clips and take you kind of on a journey here for the next 30 minutes or so with some things I think you need to know. And we can talk a little bit about our mission and where we're headed as a country. Right now, things are, I would say I'm both extremely optimistic, but also we live in a very brutal dystopian time. I was just with Laura Logan. I don't know if you know who she is. And I was having dinner with her in Texas, and she said to me something that really struck me, and I wanted to share it with you. She said that we are at the gates of Auschwitz right now. It's a metaphor, and she said there's already been the coup. The Wikipedia page, they mentioned the Wikipedia page. It's so horrible it evokes audible gasps if you read it about me. I've never lied about anyone in my life. I've never doctored a tape in my life. In fact, I've never lost a lawsuit in my life. But they call me a liar for recording reality. So I was born in 1984, which is kind of ironic. And if you have not reread the book this year, read it again and again. Orwell says that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4. If that is granted, all else follows from that premise. But they're not allowing us to say that 2 + 2 = 4. In fact, they're blocking us if we don't say 2 + 2 = 5. So Project Veritas, and if we can pull up the video here, Project Veritas was founded on the premise of just something very simple. We expose reality. That's all it is. There's only one reality. There's only one truth. There's not multiple realities. But that's where we are. So we are at the gates of Auschwitz, and the only thing that's preventing us from crossing that Rubicon is we the people. Trust me when I say this, and I'll show you in a moment. They don't fear politicians. They certainly don't fear the media. In fact, they work with the media. The only thing they fear at this point is being exposed by you and me. And that's the only thing they fear. It's kind of ironic that the only thing they fear is people who may not have much power. And they're right. We don't have much power. We're nothing. But we're not alone. And that's where our real power comes in hand. In the last 2 weeks, Project Veritas has received some 10,000 messages from people inside government, education, pharmaceutical companies, state senators, some of whom are willing to risk it all and be fired because they refuse the vaccine, but all of whom say, hey, give me one of those little hidden cameras. I don't care about my job anymore. That's very powerful. I've never seen that before. Traditionally, an investigative reporter would take months, if not years, to develop their deep throat. Nowadays, we've got 10,000 deep throats coming at me in the last 2 weeks. I don't have enough capacity. In fact, we have a whole call center operation where we're just returning phone calls. So, this week, Project Veritas released the most watched story in Project Veritas history. This is actually outdated. It's gotten 5 million views on YouTube. It's extraordinarily still on YouTube. In fact, I think the reason they don't want to take it off YouTube is because it would become an international event if they banned me from YouTube. We have to use jujitsu tactics against them, like that. So this is a federal hospital in Arizona, Health and Human Services, emergency room, and they're making candid conversation, and the whistleblower records this conversation. I think we have a little clip here. If we could turn the sound up.
Full of shit.
Tell us about who this person is.
Dr. Gonzalez is one of our emergency room doctors at Phoenix Indian Medical Center.
And she's a federal employee?
Correct.
Now you got this guy in room 4 who got his second dose of vaccine on Tuesday, has been short of breath.
He's got myocarditis.
Yes.
Oh, this is bullshit.
No, let's see.
It's probably myocarditis due to the vaccine.
Right.
But now they're not going to blame the vaccine.
Well, and you know what? But he has an obligation to report that, doesn't he?
They are not reporting.
Right.
Because they want to shove it under the mat.
What patient was she referring to?
She was referring to that patient, that 30-something-year-old patient that had congestive heart failure.
And in that particular patient's case, it was not reported.
No.
May I see your badges? You're Jody O'Malley with the Department of Health and Human Services. This is the United States government identification. I'm looking at the CDC website. It says that you're required to report adverse events following vaccinations. One of those would be congestive heart failure.
That's a huge one.
Were there other instances that they didn't report?
Oh, I've seen dozens of people come in with an adverse reaction.
Yeah, it's really sad. She had just come back from surgery, from leave.
So what are we looking at here?
You're looking at me transferring her to a higher level of care that could handle her condition.
And this is a colleague at your hospital who got sick.
She didn't want to take it because of her religious beliefs. And she was coerced into taking it.
Why are you choosing to blow the whistle? It's not what a lot of people would do. They're scared, they're afraid. Are you afraid?
I wouldn't necessarily say I'm afraid, because my faith lies in God and not man. This is evil at the highest level. You have the FDA, you have the CDC, that are both supposed to be protecting us.
Are you afraid they're going to retaliate against you?
Yeah. I'm a federal employee. What other federal employees do you see coming out?
But you put your faith in God.
Amen.
So, I mean, this is an extraordinary, you might say, well, that's just one person, but I can tell you, like, the reason I was late here today was I was on the phone with someone from the CDC who also works for the federal government and who also said, I think I'm just going to give up my job for the public's right to know. And this is a phenomenon happening. Let's go put the video back on the screen. The hospital responded and didn't deny what we had uncovered. In fact, they said they're investigating the matter. Jody, the whistleblower, this is outdated, has raised $500,000 in a few days on a GoFundMe, not a GoFundMe, we used the Christian alternative Give, Send, Go, because GoFundMe effectively blocked me from raising money on that website. And so USA Today, and it's important I take you into the weeds here. You have to understand how propaganda works in this country. Many of you do, some of you don't. What these organizations do, and I'll share with you the New York Times lawsuit we have going on, is they do a quote-unquote fact check. So they call me and say, we want to fact check this. I hope you're doing, I'm a reporter with USA Today. This is 2 days ago. And I'm reaching out for a comment for a fact check. Specifically, I'm fact checking the claim that the government is suppressing reports on these issues. First of all, I didn't make the claim. It's not my claim. It's an ER doctor and recorded by a current federal employee. So this actually did happen. And the hospital has commented, so I put out a video preempting USA Today and recorded my call with you on the voicemail, because they don't ever pick up the phone. They don't want my comment. They've already written their headline. And they work with Facebook. They write their piece. Facebook contracts with USA Today, and they ban us off Facebook. So this is what these people do. And you have to get around the censorship. Instagram and Facebook took down the video I showed you, but the story trended worldwide, even on Twitter. Now, just to let you know how extraordinary this is, Project Veritas is banned on Twitter. I'm banned on Twitter, and I'm suing Twitter for defamation. But the story is trending on Twitter. So when you all complain, what are we going to do about the censorship? Well, you break stories that people can't ignore, and people will talk about them. And the story did trend on Twitter. In fact, I think Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, took down Veritas, but the misspelled version of Veritas started trending on Twitter. I'm not kidding. It is kind of comedy of errors, isn't it? the censorship, if you don't laugh, you'd cry. And there are now congressional investigations this week. This happened, I don't know, 2 days ago, as a result of what you just saw. And Project Veritas has people everywhere. We also released a video of this guy. He's inside the FDA, and he was talking about we need to have he says it'll be like Nazi Germany. It'll be like the Jewish Star. This is what this guy says on hidden camera when he does not know he's being recorded. But one of the most extraordinary things I've seen last month, which really gave me a lot of hope, this happened about 3 weeks ago. I don't know if you saw this. The communist teacher in California, Gabriel Geip was his name. We got a tip in Sacramento, California. Similar to perhaps Illinois, it's almost impossible to fire a teacher in California. But in this case, we actually got this guy fired. Now, and then you'll say, well, that's just one guy, James. Okay, well, you know, my response to this whole cynicism thing is this. If you change one life, if you change one heart and mind, you change the whole world. You got to start somewhere. And in this case, we got a tip that this teacher, and again, there he is on hidden camera, he had an ANTIFA flag hanging in his classroom. So we got this tip from a student in high school in Sacramento. And we have to confirm it, so we sent one of our undercover reporters out posing as a parent. The irony there is the guy was bragging in a coffee shop to who he thought was a parent about how he wanted to scare kids and abuse them. So there's a clip here. He says, I have 180 days to turn my students into revolutionaries.
I have 180 days to turn them into revolutionaries.
How do you do that? How do you
Scare the fuck out of them. Yeah. Sacramento organization
Scare the F out of them.
that is under the banner of ANTIFA is very loosely organized, right? So like, yeah, when there is like right-wing rallies and stuff, then we'll create an opposition to that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Where would he go to connect to some of these organizations?
I post a calendar every week.
Awesome.
And then so and I do it for extra credit, so they get points for doing it. So that encourages them to do it. And I've had students show up for protests, community events, tabling, food distribution, all sorts of things. When they go, they take pictures, they write up a reflection. That's their extra credit. I have an Antifa flag on my wall. And
there's the Antifa flags bragging about this is inside a classroom in a public school. The man is even wearing a hammer and sickle shirt when we confronted him.
Gabriel, hello, how are you?
I'm good.
I am a journalist with Project Veritas.
Okay.
Nice to talk with you.
You can't make this. It looks like a Saturday Night Live sketch of what would be truth is stranger than fiction.
Don't mind my colleague recording. We are recording. But I think you're going to be more interested in what I have to say here.
I don't feel comfortable with this.
Well, that's ironic because in the hidden camera, he said, quote, I want to make my students feel uncomfortable. When we confronted him, he said, I don't feel comfortable. And this is an example of George Orwell's doublethink, right? They tell genuine lies. They tell lies while genuinely believing in them. They forget facts moments after they've expressed them, and they deny the existence of objective reality. So their ideology is completely and utterly irrational. There's no sense to it. And by the way, they're teaching your kids. Now, you might feel cynical, but not for what happened next. And this is probably the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. I've seen a lot. I've been doing this since I was 19. I'm 37 years old. This was the most extraordinary moment in Project Veritas history. How many of you have seen these school board meetings? I have never seen anything like this. It was so serendipitous. We launched the tape of the commie teacher saying, I want to scare the F out of kids. The board meeting was the next day in Sacramento. And you saw hundreds of parents, and these are not Republicans. These are, I don't know if they're Democrats. These are all types of people from all walks of life. Salt of the earth people. And this is what they said.
The second thing is, the reason why my daughter is standing behind me is because my job as her parent is to protect her from anybody that has ill will towards her. So being that this is her first year at this high school, that is world renowned and everybody knows about this school, it's so perfect and everybody does everything right. The first time my daughter tells me, and she goes against my wishes to come out of a classroom that's disruptive to her well-being, I have an issue. I am very articulate. My children are very well read. They speak their opinion. They make sure that they are clear in what they do and do not like. And for the fact that my 17-year-old daughter had to come to me and said, "Mom, you don't understand. Let me explain." This means that in 2 weeks, in 13 days, he was allowed to change my daughter's mind about some fascist crap that y'all have let in this school.
And parent after parent, we were live streaming this from, our office on a television screen from Sacramento. Parent after parent after parent were indignant, righteously indignant, rightfully so, because the guy was bragging about abusing their kids.
What has been exposed about Gabriel Geip by Project Veritas is exactly what I was concerned about happening at Babcock Elementary, Twin Rivers Unified School District, whom was and is not allowing parents or guardians on campus. As educators, your job is academics, not morals, not values, religion, political ideology, or anything outside of academics.
And over again, you saw these amazing images, which is really the mission of Project Veritas. And as you watch this, imagine this happening all over the country, right? I know this is one example, but imagine every town you had, every single city in America.
You have the men in blue here to protect you guys. They should be knocking on that door, arresting that man. I have nothing but respect for these men in blue as much as all these people do. I want to ask for your resignation. You guys don't deserve this job. There's many people in this room that can do your job 1,000 times better. I got this video this morning, and let me tell you, I'm not shocked. Why? Because there's another teacher right down the road at Leroy Green Academy who did the same thing to my son. Because you're going to see another video as soon as they get to talk to me.
Now, these superintendents did announce they were firing the teacher, which is extraordinary because they knew about the flag. They just didn't care until I showed up with a video camera. And what's extraordinary about this series of events is that usually y'all are on defense. You're never on offense. You're always getting bludgeoned by them. Well, this time they're on defense. By firing the teacher, they admitted the teacher actually did something wrong. The thing about communists is they have no shame. Well, they actually admitted they did something wrong. Now, the problem with that is it's a cover-up because, but the wrong thing was happening for years and they saw it. So they kind of dug their own grave. So you're not going to believe me. I'm about to make a statement that will make you gasp. The FBI got involved in this school board meeting and effectively got it shut down. Halfway through the meeting, they got the FBI because these superintendents were afraid for their safety because of outraged parents at the podium. The superintendents and board members left out the back door and got into their Tesla cars and drove away.
Wait, this is the guy who said he'd talk to us.
They got into their Teslas and drove away in the middle of the school board meeting. So, one small step for man, one giant leap for citizen journalism. This needs to happen everywhere. You say, well, that's just one teacher. That's just one bad, okay, well, that's one, but what 1 leads to 2, leads to 4, leads to 8, leads to 1,000, leads to 10,000. In fact, I would submit to you it's the only actual thing that will save us at this point in time. You think Congress is going to save you? You think the Supreme Court is going to save you? That pendulum will swing back and forth. I'm not sure they can ever pass anything through Congress ever again. Republicans had all 3 branches of government. Has government gotten smaller in the last 30 years? Has the budget gotten smaller in the last 20, 30 years? So I'm betting my reputation and my life's work on the fact that you will not be saved from politicians. The only thing that's going to save you is we the people exposing them, because the only thing they fear is being exposed. That USA Today reporter, guess what, folks? He didn't write the article this week. You want to know why? Because I published a video of me yelling at him on the phone. I preempted him. I said, you're going to get this banned on Facebook because Facebook's paying USA Today, aren't they? How much are they paying you? How much is USA Today being paid by Facebook? He didn't have a thing to say. I preempted him. And that's what we have to do. We have to expose them. And that's what we do at Project Veritas. Our vision, obviously, is to empower the people by being citizens for being catalysts for citizen empowerment. Someone mentioned Lucky Charms. So people say, how did you get started? How did you get started? Someone said, James, what happened to you? Something must be wrong with you to do this sort of thing. What prompted you to start this? Well, aside from reading about muckrakers from 100 years ago, like this man in Chicago, not too far from here, Upton Sinclair, who, by the way, was a socialist, who had no interest in exposing things, but was more interested in perhaps advancing an ideology. He intended to, he hit them in their heads, but he ended up hitting them in their stomach. And you had these other muckrakers later in the 20th century who were European. They went undercover. But all of these folks were socialist ideologues. I started reading about them. I started watching reports that were done in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. And I discovered that if you want to tell the truth, you can't show up with a microphone and a camera and say, hi, I'm with the New York Times. Tell me about all the fraud you're committing. So we had to go undercover. And we went undercover on a lot of stories over the last 10 years. The first video, this is going to be a crowd pleaser. I know, David, you like this one. This is me at 20 years old. First hidden camera video I ever did. I went into the dining facility at my university, Rutgers University, and said that Lucky Charms, the breakfast cereal, offends my Irish heritage. Which put them in a very difficult predicament because the university has effectively a speech code that says you can't offend anyone for anything. So I simply applied the speech code to the university. So they had only two options: ban Lucky Charms, which will make them a laughingstock, or be in violation of their own campus speech code. Which of those two options do you think Rutgers University chose?
As a student at Rutgers, he became fed up with political correctness, especially about race. So on St. Patrick's Day 2004, he met with an administrator to demand they stop serving Lucky Charms cereal with its Irish leprechaun.
We noticed that, you're at the dining halls here at Rutgers serve Lucky Charms, and we think that this promotes negative stereotypes.
You feel that he's portrayed as a...
I think he's portrayed as a little green, cladded gnome. And this is really, as you can see, we're not all short. I mean, but we have our differences of height. And
this is an exercise in keeping a straight face. How did you keep a straight face? It was really difficult. And at one moment, I actually start to laugh, but I pass it off as a kind of indignant, righteous anger about the Lucky Charms.
And interject quickly, the university's policy against verbal assault, defamation, and harassment starts off by saying that intolerance and bigotry are antithetical to the values of the university and are unacceptable.
So Rutgers agreed to ban Lucky Charms. Of course, they reinstated it almost immediately when they found out that it was a practical joke. It was sort of like 60 Minutes meets Borat. This inspired many other investigations, and I don't have a lot of time to go. I'm going to just, lightning round this for you, but this was one you all are very aware of about a decade ago. I met this young woman on Facebook. I never met her in person before. She said she wanted to go into Acorn dressed as a prostitute. Usually when you get these sort of messages, you think they're a bot, you delete the message. I said, would you be willing to do this? She said yes. The next week, we drove around the country, 2 kids from the cast of High School Musical 3 with a video camera and their grandmother's chinchilla coat, went into the office, said this is something like the FBI should be doing, or I don't know, the Chicago Sun-Times should be doing, but it's left to young people with no money and a camcorder. So we say to these quasi-government workers, we want to start a prostitution ring. I want to hide it from the cops. Can you help us? Here's what they said.
Is it against the law in Maryland? Prostitution?
Anything that the government's not getting money from is always against the law.
Let me make sure there's a code for it, okay?
A code for prostitution?
You might have to name it something else. Performance arts, let's see. Independent artists. You could be that. Dancing?
It's not dancing, trust me.
But dancing is considered an art? I mean,
Sex is kind of like dancing, right?
Yeah, some great say. Your business is a performing artist.
A performing artist?
But you are. Okay, so you're not lying. So stop saying busted.
Got it.
Now the exercise here is that the camera was embedded in my tie, so I had to make sure that at one point the battery ran out. So I ran into the bathroom, came back, was like, "Could you say everything just the way you said it?" But it's not easy with the hidden camera. But this is 2009. The technology is not as far ahead as it is now. But these workers told us how to disguise ourselves from the authorities. Now, this is a federal-funded operation and had presence here in Chicago. And Barack Obama was an attorney for Acorn.
My girlfriend's a prostitute.
Okay.
And I don't know if...
I kind of figured that.
I'm using the money that she's getting, you know what I mean?
Right, but when the police ask you, you don't know where it's coming from. Is what we're trying to tell you.
All right.
We're looking out for you.
Looking out for us. So, and I don't think prostitutes dress like that in Baltimore, by the way. So we did all this, and this was a sensation. It made South Park,
It's a kissing company.
And you're making a profit?
Oh, sure. My black employee, Sharice over there, one time she made $2,000 on one customer.
All right, get out of here.
Huh? Why?
I'm not falling for it.
But I heard Acorn helps pinching their bitches.
But in a week, the House, this is in 2009, the House and Senate of the United States were then democratically controlled. President was Barack Obama. This is September 16th, 2009, some 12 years ago. The House voted to defund Acorn. The Senate voted to defund Acorn, and Barack Obama signed that legislation in 1 week. Now, that's unthinkable these days. But again, there's no amount of money or army of lobbyists that you could effectively pay to pull this off. It took images. People need to see. Images transfix in a way that words don't. And in a way that advocacy doesn't. And I would even argue that sometimes the manifestly damning truth is so self-evidently damning that all you need to do is show it. I didn't take a position. You took down Acorn. Well, they may be reinventing themselves, but the price of liberty is eternal vigilance in the sense of you're always investigating, but I don't have the power to defund or arrest anybody. Lawmakers did that. We just exposed them. Now, it's really bad out there. There's a lot of things happening inside the campaign, schools, organizations. People are effectively bragging about how great the Soviet Union is. This is in the Bernie Sanders campaign. Listen to this.
There's a reason Joseph Stalin had gulags, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, gulags were a lot better than what the CIA has told us that they were. Like, people were actually paid a living wage in gulags. They had conjugal visits in gulags.
They had conjugal visits in gulags. He goes on to talk about the importance of breaking rocks in American gulags.
Gulags were actually meant for re-education. It was for enemies of the state to learn how to not be enemies of the state and to learn the value of a hard day's work, right?
He's just saying the quiet part out loud. Now, speaking of saying the quiet part out loud, one of the bigger stories we did this year, and I think this is my favorite story, was on CNN. Project Veritas is always investigating CNN. We still have people inside CNN that leaked us these recordings. This was Charlie Chester. I don't know how many of you saw this. This is the story that got us banned from Twitter. You might ask, why did you get banned from Twitter for quoting a person from CNN? Exactly. They should be banning him, I guess, not me. I'm just quoting the man. But the Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, thought this was so powerful that he had to remove my Twitter account because this story was trending. CNN's control room director talks about CNN's role in society in helping one political party.
I think we got him through this term. We would always show shots of him jogging, him in aviator shades, and you paint him as a young geriatric.
We were creating a story there that we didn't know anything about. So that's I think that's propaganda.
Look what we did. We got Trump out. I am 100% going to say it. And I 100% believe it, that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have got voted out.
Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be...
Our focus was to get Trump out. Without saying that was our focus. You asked me, what's the definition of an investigative reporter? The definition of an investigative reporter is to make public what people like that want to keep secret from you. That's it. Everything else is public relations. So when the New York Times and the Washington Post regurgitate crap written by government officials, that's not investigative reporting. They're just circulating memos written by government officials. This is investigative reporting because he wants to keep it. My question is, why do you want to keep it a secret? Why aren't you proud of this? I have no problem with CNN being a political action committee as long as they're honest about it.
Climate change awareness.
Do you think it's going to be just like a lot of like fear, like climate?
Yeah, fear self.
This is important. And this is actually more important than any of us realize. This is central to, I think, our whole problems in this country. Fear sells. And I think there's half, I don't know, rule of thumb, half of the American people watch CNN, maybe 30 to 40%, and believe everything they see. Why? I think because it's easier to be that way. And I think complying is easier than what we do and what I do and what the people at Project and what you do. It's just easier to comply. It's easier to have Stockholm Syndrome. It's easier to have powerful people, and I grant them they have power mostly because the tech companies give them that power via their algorithms. They prefer them in their algorithms. It's easier to not be hated by organs of propaganda like this. And when he says fear sells, people are afraid in this country. They're so afraid. And I'm not asking you to not be afraid. People say, am I afraid? Well, yes, I'm afraid, but I try not to let it affect my decision making. They capitalize on it. Don't take my word for it.
Fear self.
Let's talk about the death numbers, the COVID gangbusters with ratings.
COVID gangbusters with ratings.
And the death toll numbers that they put on the screen, well, it's all part of the art form, folks. It's all part of the show, the drive-by media. It's all part of their game to make you afraid. Again, don't take my word for it. Let me quote him.
Which is why we constantly have the death toll on the side. Let's make it higher. Like, why isn't it high enough, today? Like, it would make our point better if it was higher.
Why isn't it higher? We need it to be higher. We need more people to die so we have more ratings to make people afraid. He's saying it. He's saying the quiet part out loud. These videos were so viral, they were trending #1 on Twitter, even after I was banned on Twitter. In fact, Veritas grew exponentially because before I could post things on Twitter, and now everyone wanted to post our stuff on Twitter, so I would just text the video to 1,000 people, and they would upload it in what I call distribution by proxy, which is a slogan turned by your native Saul Alinsky here from Chicago. Not everything Saul Alinsky said was evil. Some of it was just pragmatic. So even though he did supposedly dedicate his book to Lucifer. Now, this is me dialing into the CNN phone call at 9 a.m. with CEO Jeff Zucker on the phone. You may ask, how did I get access to this phone call? Well, a CNN employee gave me the dial-in information, and that person still works for CNN, by the way. And they never found out who it was. And you have to waterboard me for me to tell you. No, I still won't tell you. This is me dialing into the CNN phone call with Jeff Zucker, one of the more extraordinary moments, I would say, in Project Veritas history.
You're unmuted. Hey, Jeff Zucker, are you there? Hey, yes. This is James O'Keefe. We've been listening to your CNN calls for basically 2 months, recording everything. Just wanted to ask you some questions if you have a minute. Do you still feel you're the most trusted name in news? Because I have to say, from what I've been hearing on these phone calls, I don't know about that. I mean, we got a lot of recordings that indicate you're not really that independent of a journalist.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. So everybody, in light of that, I think what we'll do is we'll set up a new system.
Well, the problem with that, Zucker, is that I'm just going to get on your new system. with the new person, with the person that's still on the inside. I mean, that may be the first time you've ever seen president of CNN defecate on camera there. Project Veritas is everywhere. In fact, we have a lot of on-the-record whistleblowers. This is a new phenomenon. Again, this was a year ago, but now there's 10,000 people like Kerry Porch deciding to give up his job and his career for the public's right to know.
I decided to wear the camera because I didn't see any other option. When I came to work at CNN, I mean, it was my dream job. And that dream actually just turned into a nightmare.
So he discussed the fact that he wanted to go to CNN, but it was CNN that betrayed him. Another thing we talk about in this country is voter fraud. And the problem with this topic is that, I'm going to say this, people say, was there enough fraud? Well, I don't know if there was enough fraud to overturn the election. What I do know is there was fraud, and we documented some of it. But the tech companies won't let you even show the fraud that we uncovered. So I'm just going to show you a very brief story. This is in Minnesota. This is in Minneapolis. If we can put down the screen. This is a Minneapolis man who recorded himself harvesting ballots. This is in a Somali community in Minneapolis. I did not record him. He recorded himself privately to his Snapchat, and a source gave this to us. And I've translated it for you. As you watch this, please be advised that it's a crime in Minnesota to have in your possession more than 3 of these ballots, and he was filling some of them out.
Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Wajidaan gaarigaygu waa buuxaa. Waxaas waa absent ballot salka yaala. Soo ma jeedin. 2 in the morning, still hustling.
Still hustling, committing all these crimes. Not only did we get the ballot harvesters on tape, we got a video of a ballot harvester. There's his face, a voter, and we actually got the cash exchange of money on hidden camera. This is a federal felony and a state felony. Do you think the Attorney General of the United States prosecuted it? Did the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, prosecute it? No. We're a nation of laws, right? We're supposed to be equal before the law in the sense that there should be prosecuting of these crimes equally. In fact, we even got one of the individuals to admit that it was illegal, and he also admitted that he didn't care.
That's illegal, why? We don't care illegal. How much are you? Good one.
I was given money so that I could vote. Now, this was a very damning expose. They say there's no such thing as voter fraud. It doesn't exist. But this is on such a scale, at least in Minnesota, that it actually could materially have an impact on the election. So guess what happened? The New York Times wrote a glowing article about how damning it. No. The New York Times did a front page story saying that it was part of a, quote, disinformation campaign. That was the word that they introduced. Disinformation. This is their new buzzword. Project Veritas releases misleading video as part of what experts call a coordinated effort, a disinformation campaign. They said that I was, quote, making claims without evidence. All I showed you was evidence. I didn't make any claims. I was quoting these people. See, this is dystopian. This is Brave New World. Coming from an organization, the New York Times, that never shows you any evidence. They don't give you any documents. They don't give you any on-the-record whistleblowers inside these federal agencies. They don't show you recordings of people's faces when they quote hearsay, quoting other hearsay. And this is what, and you know that they do this. They accuse their enemy of that which they are guilty of. And we don't do that because that's evil. I can't reduce myself to doing that, but that's what they do every day. So what did Project Veritas do? Well, we sued the New York Times for defamation, and we're winning. We're winning. We're one of a handful of people in the last 50 years to have defeated the New York Times' motion to dismiss this lawsuit, and the New York Times appealed it and lost twice. And we are barreling towards videotaped depositions against New York Times reporters. You might say, what did you sue them for? The New York Times reported in the first sentence of the article that the articles were fake, that they were deceptive. And the New York Times defense in their motion was that statement your videos are deceptive is an opinion. To which the judge said, why are you putting opinions on the front page and calling them facts? In fact, the New York Times' term of art was, Your Honor, they're unverifiable expressions of opinion. And the problem with that defense was that tech companies were banning our video because of what the New York Times reported. So you can only imagine the damages I'm going to get at jury verdict when I expose this for what it is, which is a tautology. The New York Times, this is very important. I know I'm in the weeds here, but this is why we're in the position that we're in. The New York Times does an article on the front page calling the videos you just saw fake. I sue them. Their defense, Your Honor, it was just our opinion. But Facebook uses the New York Times as their fact-checking organism to ban the videos so that none of you can see them. Do you see the tautology at work? And none of us feel like we can do anything about it, right? What can I do? Well, I'm suing the shit out of them and winning. It cost us $500,000 just to get to this point in litigation. Another reason why people don't do this is too expensive. This is the judge in New York, the Supreme Court of New York. This is what he said.
The articles that are the subject of this action called the video, quote, deceptive, but the dictionary definitions of, quote, disinformation and deceptive provided by defendant's counsel certainly apply to Astor's and Shu's failure to note that they injected their opinions in news articles, as they now claim.
They injected their opinion in news articles, says the judge, and we're going towards discovery in this case. We're going towards deposition. Project Veritas has never lost a lawsuit, not once. They selectively edited that out of my Wikipedia page. And you might say, well, how many people have you ever been deposed? Ever been deposed before? Okay, I have a dozen times. I like depositions because I got nothing to hide. They have everything to hide. It's amazing what happens when you put one of these people under oath. It's like beautiful. You can see the cognitive dissonance come alive. You can see the Orwellian doublethink. It just melts away. This is one of these individuals, a Hillary Clinton operative, Bob Creamer, a local Chicago guy, married to Jan Schakowsky. She works for him. Bob Creamer sued me. Some arbitrator said, well, you know, give him $50,000, make it go away. I said, so help me God, I will not settle this lawsuit. I'm going all the way to trial. And in the depositions, this happened.
Have you been to the rape barn?
Don't girl. Did you hear the statement, have you been to the rape bar?
I did.
Who said that?
That was me.
Okay. Did you eventually publish a video of these events?
I published a video of events that occurred earlier that evening.
So you edited out these parts where, these first two parts where you and Ryan Clayton were confronting Miss Moss. You didn't include...
I object to your characterization of my actions.
Okay. Well, you're not a lawyer, so your lawyer's here, and he'll object for you. So what I'm asking you is...
Well, I disagree with your characterization of my actions.
Which part?
That I edited anything out.
Oh, okay. So what did you do that these parts didn't make the video?
Well, so it's called editing.
Now do you understand? Do you get it? These people control the newsrooms, all right? They write the articles in the New York Times. This is who these people are. It's utterly irrational. There's no logic to any of it, but they have tremendous power. I'll tell you one more story and I'll close out with a comment. The Bob Creamer case. Again, this is your guy in Chicago, not your guy, but a local guy in Chicago. This is one of the individuals that sued me. Shirley Teeter was her name. You see, she's got the oxygen tank. Sympathetic plaintiff. It goes all the way to a federal, I'm going to a federal jury trial. This is 3 years ago in North Carolina. It's where she lived. And this was in the Democracy Partners investigation. Shirley Teeter walks up to the steps with the oxygen tank, and there were no facts in law on their side. They had no case whatsoever, but Project Veritas had some tricks up our sleeve because while they had the sympathetic plaintiff, I got myself a lawyer who happened to be blind. And the jury probably found it more interesting that we had that lawyer. And we won that case. And the judge in the case said this. This is a federal judge, Article 3, constitutionally appointed federal judge. It goes all the way to a jury verdict, and the judge gavels the case right before the verdict. I probably spent $1 million just to get to this point, more than that. And the judge actually looked at them and said, by the way, they had 7 lawyers. I had a blind lawyer. And said, why are we here? How did this get so far? And he said a comment about Mike Wallace. He said, if CBS or NBC was sued for this, people would laugh. This is what this federal judge said.
I realize Mike Wallace is dead, but I think about in terms of, well, if Mike Wallace did that, could someone have sued him? How quickly do you think that case would be thrown out of court? It just seems to me that that sort of standard for any type of journalist is one that eviscerates the First Amendment, doesn't it?
And the judge dismissed the case on a Rule 50 directed verdict, which is very rare. That means that it's unreasonable for any juror to rule against me. I don't know why it got this far. I guess because my name is James O'Keefe. But it's absurd. And what I learned from that, which is a lesson I think will apply to all of you, there have been a number of these war stories. It's me walking out of a federal courthouse winning a federal jury verdict, is this: don't settle. Don't compromise. Don't give them an inch. I could have spent, I don't know, $50,000 to make all this go away. We spent, whatever it was, $1.5 million, but we won. And we've never lost. And I don't think we can lose. In fact, I don't think that anything can defeat Project Veritas from the outside. And I will close with this. We have another story coming out next week. I think it's really big, and I can't tell you what it is or where it is, but it comes out Monday evening. We have a book out called American Muckraker in January. You can pre-order it there. It's all the proceeds go to our organization. But I want to read you a quote from this book, just read you a couple paragraphs. This is about journalism and ethics and political science. And I quoted a guy from a movie called To Kill a Messenger, a guy named Gary Webb. And he wrote this, and I want to read it to you. And this is in this book. He writes, I was winning awards, getting raises, lecturing college classes, appearing on TV, and judging journalism contests. And then I wrote some stories that made me realize how sadly misplaced my bliss had been. Gary Webb said, the reason I'd enjoyed such smooth sailing as a journalist for so long hadn't been, as I had assumed, because I was careful and diligent and a good reporter. No, the truth was, in all those years, I hadn't actually written anything important enough to suppress. That was Gary Webb. So the muckraker has to be prepared. We have to be prepared to basically suffer, to go through pain, to be attacked, to be hunted. But I think what's going to happen next is the people will rise up. And the people will be activated. You don't have to hypothesize this. I'm speaking with federal employees who are willing to give up their careers. And 1 becomes 2, and 2 becomes 4, and 4 becomes 8. And the same experiences that torture you inspire other people to come out, and these people place more value on the truth than their own livelihoods. So I don't think anything can stop us as long as we, the people, are activated. And yes, we are nothing, but we're not alone. Yes, they do have tremendous power, but that's in part because we choose to surrender to them. We've given them this power. Y'all, boomers, have given them this power. And then 40 years later, you look and say, where the hell are we? So the balance of political forces can change. The role of the oppressor can be reversed. David can assume new strength. Goliath can be attacked on all sides. And the hunter, the people that are coming after us, I think they'll soon become the hunted. And if you're lying, cheating, stealing, scamming, saying no one should know this, and the next video we come out, the guy goes, don't tell anybody what I'm about to tell you. Well, the person sitting across from you might be wearing a hidden camera. Stay tuned, everyone. Thank you.
We have time for 2 questions for James O'Keefe. Put your hand up if you really want to answer. And the first one is Chance, leader.
One of the things I'd like to say, it's really amazing to me all the work you've been doing just recently when your headquarters got totally flooded out with Hurricane Ida. So I congratulate you twice over.
Yeah, this is an image, if you could put that on the screen there, of our office. 6-7 feet of water. We were in, our headquarters is in Westchester County, and this is like a once in 100-year event. So I'm a Mamaroneck. So our office was completely destroyed by rising tsunami of water after the remnants of Hurricane Ida. So we are actually homeless right now. But the good news is our undercover reporters are everywhere. So thanks for saying that. We're going to have to relocate somewhere. Maybe not New York. I don't know. We'll see.
And the other hand I see is over here. Hold on for the microphone, please. And if you could identify yourself so that James knows who's speaking.
Joe McCullough from Niles. I think a good place to look for corruption is the county clerk of Cook County.
So the problem in your state is that it's illegal for me to record in your state. You have something called a 2-party consent statute. So that law has to be changed for me to operate here because I am the type of person that they would arrest and prosecute. So unfortunately, all of the most corrupt states, California, Illinois, Maryland, they have these laws, Pennsylvania, where you can't actually do what I do here. And but in order for me to do it, I got to record these people. You guys should get that law changed.
Since those questions were so brief, James, we have one last one over here
No problem.
to your right.
Hi, I'm Patricia Easley. I am the host of Black Excellence Hour, the only conservative show on Urban Talk Radio here in Chicago. Yes, we are turning Chicago red very rapidly. But as you know, this is a very blue state, and they are kicking my ass. So my question is, what is a tip that you have for people like myself who are in the trenches trying to turn the tide as we are being attacked, maligned, you name it, it's going on. What's the best way to navigate this new path?
Navigate the attacks from people? I mean, try not to let the attacks distract you from whatever it is that you are doing. I learned very early on to not read the comments, initially. And the Wikipedia page was rough in the beginning. That really affected me. And I think that if you do let that affect you, you kind of are surrendering. It's everyone does it. I've done it, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to surrender to them anything that they don't deserve. Just do what you're doing. Speak the truth. And I think the only thing that they really are afraid of is being exposed at this point. I don't think anything else they're afraid of. They don't care about the law or politicians. Politicians spend most of their time on social media, which is doing all the censoring. And my advice, even on something like getting banned, some people said, well, don't publish the video because you might get banned on Twitter. And I said, I'm not afraid of getting banned on Twitter because people will rise up and share it.
Mark Zuckerberg called me a Romanian troll. Yeah, let's put out I'm sorry. Mark Zuckerberg put out a press release that said any Blacks for Trump's groups are Romanian trolls. So I had to send a picture of myself holding my U.S. passport along with a scanned copy to prove that I am an American as an 8th generation American. So this is very difficult as we are out here trying to do the work to keep this country great.
That's right, and they call it's not true that you're a Romanian troll. He's just lying about you. So Jack Dorsey lied about me, and I sued him for defamation. And whether that's something you do, not everyone can do it, but I think we need about 100 people suing Jack Dorsey for defamation. I think we need a People's Defamation Defense Fund in this country. Can you imagine if 50 people sued the New York Times? Can you imagine? What if 100 people sued what if 1,000 people sued the New York Times? And by the way, I will depose those New York Times reporters under oath on video. You saw that videotape. You think they're going to be scared? 100% they will be. They're going to be scared, and maybe they might think twice about calling you a Romanian troll. The only thing they care about is being exposed. They care about nothing else. Read history. The only thing communists are fear is being exposed. So you got to expose them. And you can't, this is a hard thing to do, but I'm going to say it. You can't care so much what they say about you. You can't surrender to them. Worry about being disliked by them. They hate you more than you can imagine. Focus on what you can control, which is doing what you're doing, speaking the truth, and exposing them all. Thank you.
Let's hear it again for Heartland Liberty Prize winner James O'Keefe.